Rush Hour. I'm your host, Ryan Rush, and tonight I want to talk to you guys about something that's interested me for a long time. This is mycology, or the study of mushrooms. Now, I've been somewhat of an amateur mycologist for a long time because I've just always been fascinated by them. There's something about mushrooms that's just, they're not like anything else on this planet. The way they look, the way that they grow, the way that everything about them is interesting to me. And hopefully by the end of this episode, it will be interesting to you as well. I'm going to try to make it that way. Anyway, okay. Now you may be wondering why I'm using this as a paranormal subject. Well, you'll see, because there is a lot of paranormality about mushrooms. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is, all right, the mushrooms spores. Okay, that's where it all begins. Now, the spores, who knows where they come from? All right, there are so many weird theories about them. And if you just look at mushrooms, they look like a candidate for an extraterrestrial organism. It's just crazy how they look. And some of them are just wild, straight up. The colors, the shapes, just there's so many different ones, so many different kinds. And they all do so many different things. But they all start from a spore. Okay, and these spores, living samples of these spores have been collected in every layer of our atmosphere. Okay, how did living spores get into every layer of our atmosphere, for one thing, and how did they sustain life in every layer of our atmosphere? We couldn't. So, they're resilient. They're extremely resilient. The thing that makes them so resilient, though, is their outer coating, the outer layer of the spore. Okay, it is extremely electron dense. All right, so electron dense that it almost replicates a metal. All right, it does approximate a metal. It's basically what it is. And this metallic surface that it has actually acts as major protection for this thing, because it deflects UV light and radiation. Okay. Now this is so crazy because the UV rays, there's a lot of things that can't take ultraviolet for a long time. Spores are not one of them. Spores will live. There's no killing them by radiation. What would that allow? Okay, if you're impervious to radiation, okay, you could go anywhere, do anything, and not be harmed. There's a theory that mushrooms actually originated from somewhere else in the universe, that they're not indigenous to Earth. And I'm not one to dismiss that theory, because the more I have studied this, the more I've learned about them, the more sense that kind of makes. And I'll kind of tell you why. This is the main thing, really, that lends the most credibility to that theory for me. All right. I think that because the mushrooms are so resilient, because they're able to deflect radiation at high levels, that would make space travel so easy for them. When you want to actually store spores and you want to keep them alive, you want to preserve them, you have to replicate the conditions of outer space. They require pretty much darkness, total darkness. They require a low temperature. They require, you vacuum seal them. I mean, they don't need oxygen getting to them if you want them to be preserved. I mean, that's okay. You got a place that's cold, dark, and no air to keep these things alive, like to keep them thriving. Basically, I think they would probably stay alive anyway, but that's your safest bet if you're storing them. Now, how weird is that? That you have to replicate outer space conditions to keep them alive for a long period of time like that. Otherwise, they're pretty much immortal, I think. But that is strange, okay? The theory that people have, though, on how they got here to begin with from outer space was that, like, they traveled on, like, a meteor or something like that down to Earth. And as soon as it struck, wherever it was, it shed the spores or whatnot, or it shed them the whole way here, just sprinkling them down on Earth. I don't know, but that's the theory that some people have about it. And I mean, it's not that far fetched, in my opinion, because of how they're made. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know, but I don't doubt that something like that could happen and probably has happened. And it may not be, I don't know. I definitely don't think mushrooms are the only thing that aren't indigenous to this planet that are here, but they're definitely one of the most interesting. But the outer layer of that spore is the hardest organic compound found in nature. There's nothing harder than the outer layer of a spores or of a spore. And it's interesting because it also has, when you look at it closely, like I guess under a microscope, something like that, you can see that there is a purple hue to the actual layer itself. And that actually is what helps deflect the UV light the most. This purple hue, though, I don't know where it comes from or, you know, why it's like that. I mean, that's strange. Anyway, purple of all things to have a purple hue to it. Now, um, also the it's at the bottom of the food chain. Okay, the mushroom is the lowest part of the food chain because it is a primary decomposer. All right. Now, a primary decomposer is something that feeds off of dead plant matter, dead animal tissues, things like that. It basically cleans up the environment. So when you have mushrooms around, they are actually cleaning the environment by feeding on the dead crap, the stuff that nobody else wants to eat, I guess. It's also the only place in the food chain that is completely free of karma. If you think about it like that, there's, no give and take there. I mean, you're it's weird. I mean, it's weird that a plant, something like that, a fungus like that was put here to actually, I mean, put here with the ability to clean its environment. That's an important job for anything to have. I mean, it's really crazy. So, they're very necessary to have in an ecosystem and, in nature. So, anyway, but, these traits are totally unique to their kingdom, to the mushroom kingdom. I mean, it's really strange because nothing else really shares these traits. So that gets me thinking too, well, nothing else on earth is like these. So did they really originate here, or is there actually something to this theory that they came from space? I mean, all the way from way out, whoever knows how, where, I don't know. You know, could have been far beyond, billions of light years away and they just got here or something. I don't know. There's no telling, but I'm just spouting off at the mouth right there. But it's weird. All right. The fact that it has this metallic layer also allows it to pick up global currents. Okay, and these global currents can form on the outer layer, since it's pretty much quasi-metallic. It can form on the outer layer and further deflect radiation. So you've got something that is completely impervious to radiation. That means it's not dying easily, for sure. And it comes down from, say it did come from outer space, man, it's gonna live, it's gonna make that trip. No pun, but it's gonna live. And when it hits the ground, that's when the spores would shed and it would be introduced. So, I mean, that's something to think about right there. You got this plant, it's totally neutral, bottom of the food chain, no repercussions for its actions, and all it's doing is helping the environment. Not to mention the nutritional value that it has too. Um, Lots of mushrooms, a lot of people will call some, I know, like chanterelles and stuff like that. I've heard people refer to them as um, forest chicken or something like that because they're so high in protein and other nutrients that, yeah, I mean, if you're out there and you can find those, you can forage for those, it'll keep you alive for a while, I'm sure. I mean, that's another thing. They can help us sustain life. Now, that's really crazy to me. It's almost like they were sent here to help us. And I'm not sure that they weren't, honestly. I mean, to be completely honest. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's weird though when you think about all of this and you think, put that in reference to the theory I was talking about with them coming down from space. you know, there's no reason they couldn't have, honestly, because we don't know exactly where they originated from. There's a lot of things in nature we don't know about. And I'm not sure that organic intelligence isn't a thing, like an actual thing. And I think that if it were, then mushrooms would probably be one of the smartest things on the planet as far as organics go. But I might save that for another time. Anyway, um, well, there's lots of different kinds of mushrooms, and most people have seen the majority, or I'm not going to say the majority because there's so many, but most people have seen all the common ones. And you've got like morels, chanterelles. I've already talked about those. Blue sky mushroom, giant puffball mushrooms, boletes. There's so many kinds, and they're all identifiable through their own characteristics. None of them are the same. I mean, there's so many different kinds. And another thing about it is the fact that some of them are psychedelic. Okay. So, what? I mean, it just seems like almost like there is a mushroom for every purpose in a way. I mean, for life, a spiritual purpose, a nutritional purpose, a environmental purpose. I mean, it's really strange when you stop and think about this. Uh, a lot of people, you know, have heard about psilocybin mushrooms, which are the ones that are psychoactive. Psychedelic mushrooms, okay, psilocybin is the active ingredient, or it's the ingredient that causes it to be active. I can explain that in a minute. The the thing about psilocybin mushrooms, okay, they are put, I mean, well, they are here. They were put here by through nature somehow. All right. And they can do so much benefit for us as people. There's such beneficial properties to them because they are probably the absolute best antidepressant that you could ever find. And I'm not lying when I say that, because I know from my own experience that after you've taken these things, you feel the next day, if you can actually get to sleep, you feel like $1,000,000. I mean, it's like you had a life shower. Like, everything is so much nicer, so much better. You feel so much more positive. You feel like everything has just, like, everything's gonna be okay, just an overall sense, heightened sense of well-being. And that's one thing that really interests me about them, because what other plant can do that for you through one experience with it? I mean, and you don't even have to take a lot. You don't have to take as much as it would be required to start hallucinating. You can get these benefits off of like microdoses and stuff like that. And microdosing is a big fad these days. I mean, I was young when when I, did stuff like that, but these days you've got people who are like grandma's age microdosing, and not just with mushrooms either. They're doing it with LSD too, and probably mescaline, other things like that. Uh, LSD is 100 times stronger than psilocybin. Mescaline is 10 times stronger than psilocybin. Okay, so you've got those two things with microdosing, but I know that people do those also, but I don't think that they give you the exact same effect and benefit as the psilocybin would. Now, low dose is what you're talking about when you're dealing with wanting to just get those benefits from it. The You get into a hypnagogic state, basically, and it's kind of a transitory state between being awake and being asleep. That's the best way to put it. It's not a psychedelic experience like you would think. I mean, I've been there before, and that type of, I mean, it's not unpleasant or anything like that, and I don't see how it could ever be. So you really can't go wrong with low doses. It's when people start taking high doses and start wigging themselves out, that's when you got problems with it. Though it really doesn't happen that much from what I've seen. Most people can control what they're doing, but they are hard to gauge as far as potency goes sometimes. So you do have to be careful. And I'm not in any way advocating anyone going out and looking for these, and picking mushrooms that you don't know what they are. If you don't know 110%, I mean, if you're 98% sure that's one, don't eat it. Period. You have to be absolutely certain that you know what you're eating. Okay. And it can be tricky, because some of these differences in these mushrooms are very subtle. And those subtle differences can mean life and death. I mean, honestly. So, I want to get that out there. I'm not advocating this whatsoever. Um, I mean, I'm not advocating going and getting them yourself if you don't know what you're doing. I know some people do. Okay. I'm not talking to you. So chill. Anyway, all right. It's good for other stuff though, not just antidepressant. I mean, it's great for anxiety disorders, headaches. Like if you get frequent headache, cluster headaches, migraines, things like that, it can help tremendously with that. It helps with OCD. It helps with OCD a lot. I've known a lot of people who have uh, really experienced benefits from that, or for that. Anyway, depression, we've covered that, but addiction too. There's I can't tell you how many times I've heard of people actually taking some kind of psychedelic mushroom, and they just when their trip was done, they didn't want a cigarette ever again. I mean, it's just weird. Sometimes that happens, and it can actually help people with alcoholism a lot too. It I know it reduces the urge to drink alcohol after you've taken these. Anyway, the effects, though, this is also interesting, last up to a month after you did it. So, after you initially take it, you're going to have 30 days of an enhanced mood. I mean, it's going to be, it's really, and it really is that way. I can attest to that. It really is like that. You really do feel those effects. I mean, for a prolonged period after you've done it. And it's strange because you feel like you're you're operating like you're supposed to, almost. Like the stuff from the world that's gotten you down and bummed you out and made you anxious and all that crap that we have to deal with every day, it's like it's not as bad for that next month. It's really weird. And you guys, I hope you can see now why I've always been so fascinated with learning about these and studying them and things like that, because it is so interesting. Now, psilocybin mushrooms, excuse me, are thought to have been used by us for like the past 7,000 years, like cavemen, you know, we're riding dinosaurs, tripping on mushrooms. I'm just kidding. But the stoned ape theory is a thing. And I'm not saying it's real, or I mean, I'm not going to put any type of conclusion on that. But Terence McKenna thought that it actually it actually developed, or like pretty much helped develop our intelligence from them taking these, and other evolutionary benefits among those things. But he actually did believe that it was, it helped us achieve a heightened intelligence, like better and more intellectual mind, I guess. That's weird if you think about that, because I don't know. I'm not going to get into Terrence McKenna right now. We'll just leave that right there. And I'm sure you guys can understand why. Some of you know who he is. I mean, he's interesting though. Check him out if you haven't ever heard of him. Anyway, the first reliable account happened in 1799. Okay, that's, I think, the first reported account that there was no question they did. Anyway, it was actually 4 kids who were accidentally fed psilocybe simulanciata, which is commonly known as liberty caps. They call them liberty caps because the cap it resembles the Liberty Bell. It's like the same color, same type of shape, all that. So that's why they call them that. Anyway, that's what it was documented as that they took. And there is another one that is edible, completely harmless and edible, that resembles the psilocybe simulanciata. So yeah, I can see how that happened if someone didn't know what they were doing. I just wouldn't feed my kid any mushroom, I don't think. I don't know. I mean, not unless I knew for certain what it was. And these people might have thought they did know for certain, but they didn't. And you got to know how to distinguish things. That's another piece of advice I'll put out there. If you're going to go out and learn this stuff, learn the subtle differences in the lookalikes. Okay, you're going to have lookalikes. Learn everything about the other ones too. It could save your life or someone else's. So if you're going to do that, learn how to distinguish and discern which ones you're messing with. That's that. Anyway, most commonly though, psychedelic mushrooms are used by people among the ages of 34 and younger, 34 and below. So basically, by the time you get up to past 35, I guess you just really aren't worried about taking mushrooms anymore. I mean, it's a lot earlier than that for me, but whatever. Anyway, so the thing about psilocybin mushrooms is they're safe. They're safe to ingest. Physiologically, they're not going to harm you. They don't affect your liver function. They don't affect your hormone levels. There's no known interactions. That's another thing. It doesn't interact with anything. Any drug that we have, man-made stuff, it doesn't interact with. And that's probably one of the most strange things that I've ever heard about it, honestly. But I mean, it doesn't raise your toxicity level, it doesn't raise your blood sugar levels. It's I mean, they remain unaffected after you've taken this. So that is that is really, really weird, if you ask me. It's also a serotonin agonist, psilocybin. Um, whatever. I mean, whatever. If you know what that means, a serotonin agonist. Uh, it helps produce the serotonin. Okay, so what you're gonna do is if you're already on SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, uh, I would say you probably should exercise a little caution if you're going to take those, okay, together. I don't know, and like I said, there's no known interactions. So don't be the first one to report an interaction. Be smart about what you're doing and know what you're taking, even if you're taking pharmaceutical medication, know what it does to you. Okay. Um, that will give you a good baseline on what you need to take with it and what you don't need to take with it. And you don't want to overload your brain with too much serotonin. Um, so basically, if you're going to take mushrooms and MDMA, then don't take your SSRIs that day. No, but I do remember people getting messed up on SSRIs and taking ecstasy also, back in the 90s, late 90s and stuff. I used to hear about that crap happening. And people would, uh, get themselves into some crap because of that. So always be aware. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, but drug to drug interactions have never been reported with psilocybin mushrooms. Um, you want to eat them whole and dried. The reason you want to eat them dried, okay, is because psilocybin is not actually the chemical that gives you the hallucinations. The chemical responsible for that is called psilocin. Okay, psilocybin turns into psilocin once it is metabolized in your body. However, when you dry the mushrooms, that process, I guess the oxidization or something like that of the psilocybin, goes ahead and turns it into psilocin for you. So if you're eating dried mushrooms, then that means your body is not having to break down the psilocybin and turn it into the desired chemical. Okay, you're going to bypass the whole metabolism process there, and it's going to give you a much, much greater bioavailability. So what you want to do is dry them. Dry them and eat them whole, stem and all. The stem is the most potent part of the mushroom. I cannot stress that enough to people. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people who have been at parties or something like that, and they find a little bullet laying there, a stem laying there, and they're like, "Oh man, it's just a stem of a mushroom." Blah. Oh, there's another one. Blah blah. I'm like, "Oh, what in the world did you just do, man?" Oh, it's just a stem. Yeah, it's the most potent part of the freaking mushroom. Ask somebody, man. Just ask somebody something. Sometimes, don't go assuming that everything is as it is. Because if you eat a few stems, you're gonna be wasted. I mean, much more than if you just ate the caps themselves. If you eat the whole mushroom, then you know what size it was. You know how and you can gauge a lot more by that. The dosage on these things is hard to gauge. It really is, because you can have huge mushrooms that have lower levels of psilocybin, and then you can have small mushrooms, and typically small ones are stronger. You can have small mushrooms that are just loaded. So a lot of it depends on the time of day you get them, a lot of where you get them, you know, things like that. What the season's like. It's really, there's a lot of things that go into it and contribute to that. So you've really got to think about it, and don't be dumb. Educate yourself on things that you're doing if you're going to do this. All right. I'm just having to throw these little disclaimers in here, I guess, make myself feel better. All right. Neurologically, when you look at what happens when you're on them, neurologically is similar to dreaming. Like if you were hooked up to a machine that read your brain waves, you would get the same type of thing as you would see when you're asleep dreaming if you had the machine going or whatever, monitor going. It's the same kind of thing. So that's basically what it is a dream state that you're in. And we all know how crazy dreams get. So anyway, there's like 180 different types of psilocybin mushrooms. Okay, there are tons of them. And some of them are not safe to eat. Even though they are hallucinogenic, they're also toxic. They're not safe. I would never advise anyone to just throw a bunch of mushrooms into a pot and make them a bunch of tea or something like that, because you have no clue how much you are getting. You could drink that much of that tea and be spun out for days. You just never know. And I've known people who've messed up like that, and they always wished that experience had not occurred. So that's just a word of warning for people right there. It's always better to eat and know what and how many you've ingested. It's good to know when you're doing this. Anyway, some of the different types. One of the most common ones, psilocybe cubensis, and that's the cow shit mushroom. And that's the one you go into the cow field, and grain-fed cattle mostly is where you'll find them in fields with that. And you just go walk around and find you a big old cow patty, and then typically there'll be some cubies growing all around it. I've seen them out in cow fields that tall, like I could see it from the road. Cap like that, stem like that. It's just insane how big they can get. But that's rare occasion too. But you will usually find them among tall grass where the cows have taken a dump. Anyway, psilocybe simulaciata is another very common one. And those are the Liberty caps I was talking about earlier. Liberty caps can actually be found in people's lawns a lot of the time if you're in a place where they're more common, like the northeastern part of the United States. They're very common up there, and people will find them in their lawn among leaves and mulch and stuff like that. They will sprout naturally in people's yards, also in the woods and on dead wood, stuff like that. You can find them too. So, that's just where they are. But I'm not gonna go through all the ones that I know about. There's a lot. I mean, you got psilocybe atlantis. There's some weird names too. That's another thing. Psilocybe atlantis. I've always been able to remember that one. You got psilocybe columbiana. That's another one. Psilocybe mexicana. That's another one. Uh, Psilocybe pelliculosa. Psilocybe beactosicis, Psilocybe dumontes, Psilocybe begoni, Psilocybe hispanica, Psilocybe squamosa, Psilocybe subtropicalis. There's so many, man. So many. Uh, what's another one? Zapotecorum, I think, is another one. I think that might be the only one that starts with a Z. Matter of fact, I don't know. Those are just the ones I know off the top of my head. But the another thing about psychedelic mushrooms, okay, they don't all have to be psilocybes, okay? There are other psychedelic mushrooms out there. And one of them everybody has seen before. Everybody, I don't care who you are, you have seen this mushroom. I think I have one over here, actually. Yep, check that out. That's it right there. These mushrooms, okay, red with white spots. They're called Amanita muscarias. They're also called the fly agaric mushroom. The reason they're called the fly agaric is because you can actually mix them with milk in a bowl, and it's a fly agaric. It will deter houseflies. So that's how it got its common name. All right. Interestingly, though, Amanita muscarias are the most heavily depicted mushroom throughout history. And you look at everything that has a picture of a mushroom, and it's going to be an Amanita. You're going to have the red cap with the white spots. And look at the mushroom that Mario ate. I mean, it's red with white spots. You look at like cartoons from back in the day, all the mushrooms looked like that. That's what they were. I mean, they are the most well-known type of mushroom in existence. And most people don't even know what its name is. That's interesting too, because you got a mushroom like this that has been heavily depicted throughout history, and most people don't even know that it has a name. So take it like you will, but it's it's ancient. The use of Amanita muscarias are ancient. It's like shaman and all kinds of cultures used these mushrooms. They're very interesting because they're symbiotic. Okay, they're symbiotic with coniferous trees. So you'll always find them near coniferous trees, typically. They actually have fibers that will go into the ground and connect to the root of the tree, and they'll actually feed off each other. Some people call it the fruit of the tree, of the, I guess, I think it's really any conifer, actually, it will do this with. So, like, I mean, cedar, fir, pine, it's one of those trees you look around, and if it's a shroomy looking place, you will see an Amanita muscaria. Okay, I've seen them actually growing in the middle of trails before, like heavily ridden trails. And it's interesting to find. You'll also find another variation of them a lot, and they are white caps with white spots, kind of white beige colored sometimes. Those are called Amanita muscaria formosas. Okay, they're basically the same thing. And then you've got other types too. You've got like Amanita pantherina, you've got Amanita phalloides. Amanita phalloides is called the death cap. Okay, stay away from that mushroom. It's got a greenish type hue to the cap, brownish, greenish looking, olive color kind of thing, and it can resemble the pantherina a lot. You will not mistake the Amanita muscaria for it, but it is called the death cap. That's the name. That's the common name for it, and it can straight up kill you. It's, I think, the most poisonous mushroom on earth, the Amanita phalloides. So steer clear of anything that looks like that. Okay. Anyway, just if you've got a question, I don't know if that's it. Just leave it where it's at. Don't mess with it. Nothing. That's that. Anyhow, amanitas are not psilocybin. Okay. They are legal. You can buy amanitas off the internet, and they are way stronger as far as the hallucinogenic effects go. They are way stronger than psilocybin mushrooms. The thing is, they give you a different experience. They're not as pleasant. They're not like party mushrooms, stuff like that. They really are more of a spiritual type thing, kind of like doing peyote or something. You don't want to go and hang out with your buds at the party, pretty much tripping on peyote. You want to go to a shamanic ritual or something like that. Get the full effect of it. That's the kind of thing that this is. It's along those lines. It's a really heavy trip. A lot of the thing about well, let me tell you this. The reason they're still psychedelic and they're not psilocybin is due to the ibotenic acid. Okay, it's the skin of the cap that is the most potent part of that mushroom. The red skin of the cap. It contains the most of the ibotenic acid. Okay, now when you ingest it, and there's really no way to do this naturally, you have to do it physiologically. When you ingest it, your body metabolizes it into muscimol. Okay, muscimol is basically a derivative of mescaline. All right, muscimol is the byproduct of the ibotenic acid. Okay, now the muscimol is what you want. The problem is the bioavailability is extremely low because the majority of the muscimol is expelled through your kidneys. It's filtered out through your kidneys and expelled in your urine. So, in order to get the full effects of the mushroom, and I have never done this, you pretty much have to recycle the muscimol, if you get what I'm saying. I don't know if I need to explain that any further. If I do, somebody tell them in the comments. Okay, just ask in the comments and I'll let somebody tell you what I just said. Or rewind it a little bit and you might understand. But that's what you have to do to get the full effect, basically. Because, see, taking the mushroom, ingesting it orally like that, okay, you can build up, you can make up for what you're losing, but it's going to take so much longer to actually get the level built up in your system because of how much is expelled. Then you're still ingesting and you take, tons of it, you eat tons of them or something, and then all you're going to do is expel that much more of it. It's not going to build up in your system. There's no way to really do that. So the amount of it doesn't really matter that much. What matters is how much of that compound was in the amount that you took and how much of it was expelled. Okay? If you see what I mean. So that's how you got to do it if you want the full effect off of it. Now, these mushrooms taste good. They taste great. They have a really good flavor to them, and they're gritty, really gritty when you chew them. Um, these mushrooms have healed many an addiction, and they've been studied for that purpose for a long time. I know that there was this one guy that I had listened to who was a mycologist. I'd listened to an interview with him, and he had taken Amanita muscarias a few times. And he was a chain smoker, he said. I mean, this guy like smoked, loved it. And he said that after the first time he did Amanita muscarias, he didn't go in there with any preconceived notion about quitting smoking or anything like that. But when he emerged from his hallucinations and his state of mind, he never wanted another cigarette, he said. He quit smoking. He was like, yeah, he was a smoker for about 30 years, he said, something like that, and just put him down and never wanted another one. He said, never even felt the urge to smoke another one. Now, that's weird. That if something can do that to you, my gosh, I mean, the potential that it has that is unexplored right now, or publicly unexplored, I should say, because we don't know what they know. But that's another thing though that's weird about this. There's so many benefits to these for them to have just come out of nowhere and come here to Earth, and we figure out that they can do all this stuff. They look so much different than everything else. They cannot even be studied like biology. Mycology has to be, it's a completely different set of principles. I mean, biology is the study of living things. So you're talking about a separate discipline completely for this type of stuff. So, I mean, there's a lot to this. It's a loaded topic, that's for sure. What's interesting also about the Amanita muscarias is the lore behind it. Now, there's a lot of weird stories throughout history that involve these mushrooms, and legends and things like that that involve these mushrooms too. And I wanted to share this with you guys because this really interested me when I learned about this. There is a correlation, and this is a documented correlation between this mushroom and Santa Claus. I know that sounds crazy. Hear me out. Long time ago in Siberia, like way back, okay, they had a certain type, in the villages, they had a certain type of house that everybody built and lived in. All right, these houses, um, well, let me just say the Amanita muscaria in this culture was sacred. This was a sacred object, a sacred thing, sacred plant, sacred fungi, whatever you want to call it. It was sacred. They worshipped it basically. I mean, it was used for all kinds of things. And what they would do, okay, one day out of the year, all right, the medicine man, the shaman of the village, would dress up just like an Amanita muscaria mushroom with red and white on. And the houses that everyone lived in had these little chimney type things, these little openings. Okay, so what they would do, they would put a tree, a coniferous tree, in the house with them and put it right by this hole that was in their house, in their roof. And the shaman of the village would come into their house at night with a bag full of Amanita muscarias, and he would put them under the coniferous tree that they had in their house to represent how they grow in nature, the symbiotic relationship between the tree and the mushroom. So he would leave them presents of amanitas under the tree, dressed in red and white, like the mushroom itself. And he did this for everybody in their village on one night out of the year. So if you want to take it a little bit further than Santa Claus, let's talk about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Deer are known to love these mushrooms. They will eat the hell out of them. If you are a hunter, or if you know anyone who is a hunter, you can ask them. And they'll most likely be able to tell you, yeah, they know deer love those mushrooms. Because I remember I had a friend I was telling this about, and he was like, oh, I know what you're talking about. Man, you're talking about those mushrooms and deer eat all the time. I'm like, yep, that's it. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Red cap. Deer love to eat them. So, I mean, there's a bunch of weird stuff that correlates with history. Take that for what you want. But, I think that things that are so ancient in nature have some merit to them. I'm not saying that that might be the only cause for it, and I'm not saying it is even a cause for Santa Claus's existence. He does exist. But I don't know. It's just too interesting to not acknowledge it. That is an actual custom in that culture. So that's undeniable. And it's really interesting because it's fact. That did happen. That's what happened. They did do that. I don't know, guys. But mushrooms are probably not of this world. I mean, if you look at all I've said about them, they're probably a little more than we think. I don't know. There's probably some more things I wanted to say about it, but I think I've talked about mushrooms long enough. So I will stop this one here, guys. And I want to thank everybody for joining me. And I want to thank everybody who has subscribed, liked my videos, shared my videos, everything. I mean, it's just been great to have the support that I have gotten from all you guys. And I just hope that it continues to grow and everyone enjoys the weird stuff I talk about. I try to make it as interesting as I can. But not everything is going to be for everybody. And I know that. So it doesn't hurt my feelings if you don't like something that I'm talking about, or if you don't agree with me or whatever, because I'll voice my opinions at times. But a lot of what I say is just stuff that I've read, stuff I've researched. And a lot of it is not coming from me. It's coming from everything else that I've seen on it. So external sources. So anyway, I just want to tell everybody that. But I appreciate you guys watching so much and listening and whatnot. I'm about to have audio going on other platforms. So as soon as I do, I'll let you guys know where you can get that. And I guess that's about it. So if you're new, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more for notifications of more episodes, because there will be more. And I am planning a phone interview very, very, very soon. Next episode or the next one of those. I'm planning on getting that out there. So it's going to be really interesting, I think. I don't want to tell you guys what it is yet because it's not in stone, but it'll be interesting. All right. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I'll be back with you guys as soon as possible. Everybody stay safe, please, and don't go eating shrooms that you don't know what they are. Thanks.